Hello, everyone. Hello. Good evening to you all. Look, we're rolling with the flow. Life is happening, but thank y'all so much for tuning in for the Space for Sistas Women's Wellness Series. So, I'm very, very excited. And Trudy, before I dive in, I'm going to go ahead and start the podcast off and I'm going to turn it directly over to you because I know you got some gems to share with us tonight.
I
Uh,
do.
Thank you. Alrighty. And of course, uh, let's get Instagram going. So I can't bring you on Instagram because there'll be an echo, which we realized that last time. And
Oh,
so
okay.
multi streaming doesn't go over to Instagram because of the API stuff, but we're going to roll with the flow anyways.
All right.
Alrighty, so we are now live on Instagram. We are live across Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So, welcome to the Space for Sisters podcast. We are a wellness community for Black women and girls. I'm your host, Dr. Dominique Pritchett, and today I am joined by Trudy Stone. Trudy, hello.
Hi, Dominique. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Y'all, Trudy is a culinary. Hold on, let me throw some certification on that. Trudy is a certified culinary nutritionist, TV guest expert, author, podcast host, and founder of Trudy Stone Nutrition. She educates people about nutrition solutions for managing stress and anxiety. From healthy habits to brain health, Trudy is passionate about empowering people to build healthier habits and unlock the power of food to build a strong and vibrant brain and body. Trudy is also the creator of the RISE method, a step by step framework to help people overcome stress, overwhelm, and fatigue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And all of that sounds dope.
Thank you for
So
having me. So
before
excited to be here.
No, of course. So before we dive in, one, I cannot wait for our audience to hear about how to unlock the power of food to build a strong and vibrant brain and body, especially at a time like now. But before we dive in, I invite you to share with our audience what does the three words space for sisters mean to you?
Oh my gosh, so hard to choose. So
I
many
know.
things. A space that is just for us, a space where we can show up and we can be authentic, a space where we don't feel like we have to, mute ourselves, or we don't have to choose our words very carefully because we're afraid of how those words might be misconstrued. A safe place where we feel like we can be open and honest and vulnerable with each other without judging one another, but instead of lifting each other up and supporting each other.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is the infinity space, a space
Hmm.
curated, designed, and nurtured for our unique experiences.
Yes.
So, when we think about nutrition, tell us how does that fit in to managing stress and anxiety, which are two areas I clinically specialize in at my practice. How does that tie in?
Yes, I know you do. We have to think about food as fuel. Food has energy, and it can either give us energy or it can take that energy away from us. And one thing that I'm seeing as a nutritionist, and something that I find particularly alarming right now, is with during the pandemic, a lot of us are turning to foods to soothe our emotions. I mean, we were always doing this anyways, but certainly this got heightened during the pandemic. And it's a habit now that a lot of people have gravitated towards that's really hard for them to let go of. But what we really have to understand, and Dominique, I'm sure that you know this as well, is that when it comes to inflammation, depression really is inflammation in the brain. And stress really is the cause of all inflammatory response in our bodies, right? If you have a cold, that you get a runny nose. If you stub your toe, that your toe will get swollen. All of these things are the way that the body protects itself. So when we eat those foods that we're turning to manage stress, like the high sugar foods and the alcohol, inflammation is how the body essentially repairs itself because it's trying to protect you. But the thing is, your body can only do that for so long before it starts to break down. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for, eating those foods and adding those foods into our diet. That's going to help us to thrive versus just helping us or looking at it as a crutch just to get us through that particular moment that we're going through in life. And this is why I created the RISE system. This is the whole premise behind the RISE system, and understanding that, nobody's free of stress. We're all going to feel stress, but we can master the way that we react to it and rise above it so that it no longer has this immense sense of control over us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since you brought up the RISE method, walk us through what that acronym means.
Yeah, so the R is for rumination. And all of us do this every single day. Even I do this. So ruminating is when you dwell on a thought over and over and over again in your head, or you dwell on a particularly stressful or distressing situation over and over again in your head. So for that example, that could be, you had a conversation with your colleague. Maybe that conversation didn't go as well as you hoped. So now you spend the rest of your day like going over that conversation in your mind, thinking about all the things you should have said instead, or the things that you said that maybe you shouldn't said. And now you go down this rabbit hole. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Now this means that I'm probably going to get fired. Now that means I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. And you go down this rabbit hole, right? We have these thoughts after thoughts after thoughts. But when you do that, you're actually training your emotional brain. And I also call this your inner mean girl. You're training that emotional brain to become even stronger. And this makes it more likely that you're going to be ruminating again in the future.
Right.
So what I say is, let that energy of stress, because stress is a type of energy, let that energy of stress be the thing that drives you towards where it is that you want to go, not where it is that you don't want to go. It's just like the pothole analogy. If you stare at that pothole on the road, you're going to go right in there, right? We need to think about our thoughts in the same way. We need to train our brain and our thoughts for success. So I like to encourage people to redirect that stress and turn it into what I call it's a superpower, really, because it's an invitation to look at your life and look at the areas of your life where you might need to redesign. Look at those things that you're saying that you value in your life, whether it's your health, whether it's your relationships, and looking at those things that you're saying that you're valuing, but then looking at those things that you're actually doing.
Yes.
Right. And when we have that misalignment, that's when that stress comes. That's when that anxiety comes. Right. So, there's a few different things that you can do to, kind of catch yourself. And one of the things I like to teach my clients is the catch, release, replace. Okay. Because again, these thoughts are always going to be there, but we really need to learn how to deal with them in the moment so that they don't continue to pile up. So with catch, release, replace, if you're okay if I take people through it right now.
Before we go there, so the R in her RISE framework or method stands for ruminating. And it is so easy for people to get caught in their own thoughts. And before we know it, hours have passed.
Right.
Hours have passed. So how does that R directly correlate to nutrition?
Well, your thoughts influence every single cell in your body. Like you have over 30 trillion different cells in your body. And each and every one of those cells are influenced by what goes on right here, what goes on in your brain, right? So that's why this is so important. And this is why I have a podcast. It's called the Mind Your Body Show. And that's why it's called that, because really your thoughts are the foundation. I can teach you all the healthy things. I can give you the kale salad recipe. I can give you the smoothie recipe. But if you don't take care of what's going on up in here, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to be successful with reaching your health goals. You're not going to be successful with being sustainable with those health goals. Again, it always starts with our thoughts.
Yeah.
Because a thought leads to a feeling, which leads to an action.
Or
and that's
inaction.
What we have to remember.
And, I think that's what a lot of people mistake as well is my thoughts lead to a feeling, the TFA cycle. My thoughts leads to a feeling, my feeling leads to an action. But people forget not doing anything or an inaction is still a behavior. It's still doing something. It's just not maybe outward, but it could be happening inward.
Right.
Right. So we look at the thoughts, feelings, action on a triangle, and you could stay in that triangle, which sometimes starts feeling like a circle. You just looping and looping, and that's where those ruminating thoughts come in as well.
Absolutely. And that's when emotional eating comes in as well. That's something I see with my clients too, right?
Yeah. So now the catch, release, and replace, break it down. I'm ready for it.
So, let's say something's happened to you and you have that thought like, oh my God, I'm so dumb. I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe that I said that. The first thing you want to do is you want to catch that thought. Okay, so really this is a practice. This is not about being perfect. This is just about, think about it as a practice. Okay, so that that distressing thing happens to you. You have that thought that I'm dumb, or I shouldn't have said that thing, right? You catch the thought. Okay, so I want you to take a deep breath in as you catch that thought. Okay, then I want you to, release that thought. Because really, your brain is just trying to protect you. That's all it's trying to do. And that's why you have these thoughts that you do have, because your brain is it's designed to protect you first, right? So I like to say, picture those thoughts in your head. It's not like you're just trying to just cancel them completely, but you're just picturing them almost like clouds, like just floating by in the sky.
Just as an observer, as an observer.
Right, right. So when you have that thought, just say to yourself, that's an interesting thought, okay? Then the next thing you want to do is you want to actually just replace that thought with something that's a little bit more empowering, something that makes you feel a little bit better. Like, yes, maybe this thing happened, but, I know I've overcome the situation before in the past, right? I had this challenging situation before. This is how I got through it. I had this tool, or I did this thing, right? And that's the other thing. We have to look at those other areas in our lives when we've gotten through past challenges before in our life. And I call those receipts. Like, I love watching the Houses of Atlanta, right? They always talk about the receipts, right? And the receipts is pulling something out. Like, here's the evidence of something, right? So look at the past evidence. Look at those past situations that you've gotten through in your life. Even though it might not be the same exact challenge you're facing right now, what tools did you rely on? What support system did you rely on? Yeah. What were some of the things that you did? What were some of the things you asked yourself to start to move through that situation?
Yes.
So we need to get into the habit of asking ourselves more empowering questions as well.
Right. And I think that fits into, we are experiencing complex traumas, witnessing things are happening to our bodies, that we've never been through a pandemic. There are so many layers of what's happening now that people have leaned towards more of a negative or unproductive way of checking in with themselves, of what's wrong with me. Why can't I just not get over it? Well, we've gotten through hard things. And Trudy, what you're saying is go back and look at the receipts. You've done hard things. You have been able to channel and give yourself psychological flexibility with those thoughts that just come up. Be flexible.
Right. Absolutely. And, journaling, like, that's something I like to do. And that was something that I knocked for the longest time. And people used to tell me, journal, write your thoughts down. Like, I don't have time to write things down. But that's part of the problem, because we're trying to work out everything in our head. And
right? it's jumbled with what we go eat for dinner, what we got to get from the grocery store. It's all distorted.
Right. Exactly. So just take a few moments and just start writing down what it is that you're feeling. And if you look at a blank page, if you're one of those people who looks at a blank page and you get anxious, just Google writing prompts. And you'll see so many things come up, or jump on Pinterest and just search writing prompts. You'll see a whole bunch of different questions that will come up, and that will start to jog your thought process so you can work out what you're feeling and work out those thoughts and get them out of your head and onto paper.
One of the things I love doing with my clients, and I am a firm believer of journaling. It is a way to pull out, but process and go back and revisit information. So multiple reasons for journaling. But when I think of how I learn best, I'm a very visual person. Maybe I'm not in a narrative mindset of writing lines and paragraphs. So I teach my clients you remember when back in the day when you had to write papers for school, they would say, put your big topic in the middle and give it spider legs.
Yeah.
And so when people think about the concept of journaling, it is a powerful tool, but do it in a way that makes sense for your learning style and your implementation style. So I love that you mentioned journaling, and even on the track of like nutrition and mind and body, you can keep track of all those things within that one location.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Trudy, are we still at the R? No, we're still at the R. But there's so many layers, and we had to start with the thought patterns before we can even get to transformation and growth and all of that.
Exactly.
And so I think you left off at the catch, release, you're left off at replace, and then I would love for you to just get us to that I.
Yeah, so I touched on a little bit, but yeah, it's inflammation, right?
Yeah.
And we're turning to a lot of these foods that cause inflammation in the body, okay? So one thing that causes a lot of inflammation in the body is what's known as the standard American diet. You might have even heard it called the Western diet. So this is the diet that most of us is eating these days, lots of processed foods and lots of vegetable oils too. And very little, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Okay. So I talked about this earlier, like when you eat foods that your body finds unnatural, like red dye number 5, or an ingredient that has 23 letters in it, when your body sees this unnatural substance, it doesn't know what to do with it. So inflammation gets created in your body because your body is trying to protect itself, right? And in fact, when we look at some of the countries with the highest rate of depression, they also have the highest intake of sugar as well. So there's definitely a correlation for sure. But in terms of reducing inflammation, I like to talk about adding things in. Yes, we need to minimize the sugar, but I also love just talking about, hey, here are some things that you can start adding into your diet to fight back against inflammation. Like blueberries. Blueberries are absolutely delicious. And they're one of the best anti-inflammatory foods you can eat.
Love them.
They're also great for your brain. They're great for your memory and enhancing that part of your brain called the hippocampus. And this is the part of your brain that's responsible for learning and memory. Dark leafy greens. This is another great one as well. Put them in your smoothie, make a salad with it. If I'm making a big batch, a stew or something like that, I'll just stir them right in at the end. Sometimes I just use a greens powder as well. So if you just want to get a greens powder, put it in a mason jar with some water and just shake it up. You can get your greens that way too. It doesn't always have to be a salad.
Right.
Turmeric, add some turmeric to your dishes, ginger, lots of delicious things that help us fight back against that inflammation.
Yeah. And speaking of that, obviously our mouth is the gateway to our brain and to our body. And if we're putting those good, healthy, nutrient dense foods in our body, how does gut health impact our mood?
Ooh, you're jumping right to the E, Dominique.
Nope. Look, it naturally made sense. So I'm gonna go with the framework. I'm gonna go with RISE, the RISE method. So keep going. So we got inflammation, and I think that's so interesting because earlier, you identified how inflammation is how our body protects itself, but also stress triggers inflammation, and I can imagine inflammation is reciprocal to stress.
Yes.
And so
we can go right to the E if you want to go.
No. What's the S? What's the S?
The S is stress busting nutrients. Okay. And this is an important one because there's some certain nutrients that get depleted in your body during times of stress. And I'm going to get to them in a minute. But, what we need to understand is that, for years, there's been a lot of dietary recommendations for things like, treating heart disease, high cholesterol and, diabetes even. But we're just starting to see now a lot of evidence starting to come out about the effects of diet on our mental health. Okay,
Yes.
So food really hasn't been the recommended protocol for mental health until now. So in 2017, they did a trial called the SMILES trial. I don't know if you've heard of this at all. You've heard of the SMILES trial. Okay. I'll just talk about it really quickly, but they had 2 groups of depressed patients. One group just received social support, so just talk therapy, while the other group received that social support, so the talk therapy, in addition to being on a modified Mediterranean diet. And what they found was, they followed them over 12 weeks. A second group that had the talk support along with the Mediterranean diet, they had a much greater reduction in their depressive symptoms than the other group that didn't change their diet at all. And a lot of people in the nutrition community have said that if a drug could do what they were able to do in that trial with food, it would be $1 billion drug. Okay, so I'm just going to put that there.
I hear you. But I do find it interesting that people aren't prescribing stress busting nutrient foods when we talk about mental health, or even when we go to the doctor. There is a heavy tendency to lean towards the quick fixes. Right. We're not going to get into pharma and all of that. but it does present a challenge. And when we think about the unique circumstances for Black women and girls, we already know in the Black community we're reigning in so many chronic conditions, heart disease, as my grandma called it, the sugar, diabetes, and all of that.
Diabetes, yeah.
But even when we go to the doctor, we are not offered the same recommendations to get well as our counterparts.
That's right.
So what is a piece of advice you can give to Black women and girls who can advocate for themselves when they go to the doctor and have those conversations with dietitians? How can they start advocating for themselves?
First of all, I would say you have to trust your body. You have to listen to your body. If your body is telling you something, or something feels off, I need you to trust that. Okay, because I've been in that situation as well. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I've been in that situation as well, where I saw one doctor and the doctor just really wasn't, blinking an eye, didn't really want to do any additional tests, but I just kept being an advocate for myself. And I kept trying to find not a mental health professional, but just a professional at that time that would help to give me the diagnosis that I knew that I deserved.
Yeah.
Right. So I would definitely say that, don't just stop at the first physician that you see. Maybe it takes multiple physicians. And yeah, you might be thinking, who has the time to do that? But you have to make the time for your health.
Well,
so I would say that's thing number one.
Well, here's the thing. We already have multiple physicians. Obviously we are encouraging whole health, all the way from dental care, nutrition, mental health, physical health. So what if we had all four of those people in our lives already? Likely many people do. There are a lot more people going to therapy. We know the data has a huge disparity. But imagine if your therapist is assessing, which I do assess, when's the last time you've been to the doctor? Tell me, what does your daily food intake look like, taste like, and everything else? And so part of what I teach my clients is sometimes you got to teach your doctor how you want to be assessed and treated. I want you to ask me about everything. I want you to recommend anything I qualify for.
Right.
Because it's the medical world is very fast paced. So who has time for all of that? Understand your billing codes, how much time you got with that doctor, and maximize that appointment. So, but you've hit on some really, really powerful notions. What if folks don't like green veggies and all of that stuff? A lot of my clients say that's white people food. That's white people food.
You know what? You got to find a way to make it tastier. You got to find a way to make it work for you. I have a sweet tooth. So my whole story and how I got into nutrition was weight loss. I started with weight loss because I wanted to lose weight before I got married. And that's really how it started. And then I started doing a lot of research and just work on myself. And I developed my own plan where I ended up losing 30 pounds. But some of the things that I learned about the diet industry were really alarming to me. And that's ultimately why I decided to become a nutritionist, because I knew this was not public knowledge. This was not something that a lot of people knew. I knew people weren't looking at Harvard medical journals like I was, because I was a bit of a nerd. So I said, you know what, people need to know this information. So that's when I studied nutrition and I became a nutritionist because I wanted to help people. So what I will say is that, don't be afraid to not eat some of your favorite foods, okay? Your favorite foods can still fit, but we also want to try to find ways to make healthier versions of our favorite foods. So where I started was sugar, because I had a huge sweet tooth. I was eating cookies like they were going out of style. So that's where I started, experimenting with baking. I started using different flours. I started looking at, different alternative sugars. So my go-to sugar right now, and I need to preface this by saying there's no sugar that's actually good for you or that's healthy, but there are certain sugars that you can use that don't spike your blood sugar as much. So coconut palm sugar is one that I use quite frequently in my baking. So if I'm going to bake something like banana bread, I'll add in some blueberries, like I talked about earlier, because I know blueberries are good for me. I know they're great in fiber. I know they're high in antioxidants. So I'll toss half a cup of blueberries into that banana bread. I'll swap out the butter and I'll put coconut oil in there instead, right? So it's just looking at what some of your favorite foods are and seeing where you can swap out some of those ingredients so that you can make it healthier.
Right.
So that's where I would say to start is look at some of your favorite, unhealthy dishes, but try to find a way to make them healthier. Like General Tao chicken. I love General Tao chicken. I can eat it all the time. So I developed a healthier recipe for it.
Yeah.
And people, have an obsession with General Tso chicken like me, because if you go on my YouTube channel, I think that one has 30,000 views on that one or something like that.
Well,
but,
I'm gonna put a star by it because
deprived.
I'm going as soon as I get off. I don't eat meat. I don't eat meat, but I love learning about healthier versions of recipes.
Yeah.
And even when we think about budgeting and, sure, it feels more expensive to eat healthier. At times it is more expensive, but we know folks will find a way to pay for things that are a priority and that's important to them.
That's exactly it.
As a pescatarian, I eat seafood once a week. And as a pescatarian, I have learned whatever veggies are on sale, I make it work. And so I had to train my body to love and like so many different things.
Yeah.
So now, are we at E? I'm excited to get to E.
Yes, we're at E. But I want to touch on that for a second, because you mentioned that.
Sure.
You're talking about it being expensive to eat healthy. And I just did a podcast episode on this. Is my latest podcast episode. So make sure to check that out. If you want to eat healthier, but you feel like eating healthier is out of reach for you or more expensive, definitely check that one out. But, some of the things that I do is I have an app here. It's like a shopping app. In Canada, it's called Flip. I know in the US, they probably have multiple ones in the States. But I'll just pull up that app and I'll actually build my meal plan based on what's on sale.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do that. Beans, lentils, those are some of the cheapest healthy foods that you can find. And there's so many different things you can do with beans and lentils. If you don't know where to start, go on my website. There's tons of recipes there for you. Okay. But Dominique said, you could pay for your Netflix membership, but then you don't want to, buy healthier food, right? You could buy the pair of shoes, but you don't want to eat healthier food. So it's really just prioritizing. And again, looking at those things that you say that you value. If it's health, then maybe it's not the shoes this month. Maybe it's, focusing on that meal plan this month, and maybe it's saving the shoes for another month, right? But again, we need to just make a plan versus making excuses.
Right. Look, she just got to the point. She said, look, what we're not about to do is be like, well, no. And they eventually do become excuses. And I tell people, your reasons are your reasons, and we don't shame, we don't judge. But when we talk about creating healthy lifestyles, a healthier mind-body connection, wanting to heal and grow, you gotta make some sacrifices, and they will pay off. They'll pay off.
Yeah, they will. You have to stick with it. It's consistency, right? And again, I want to stress, it's not about being perfect. I encourage people to eat healthy. If you can eat healthy at least 70 to 80% of the time, you're doing good. Yes. It doesn't have to be 100%. I don't even eat healthy 100% of the time because I like wine and I like pizza.
Look, you had me at wine. Where are you at in Canada? Yes. And another thing, real quick, I think a lot of people get nutrition, and they make it synonymous with losing weight. I gotta be skinny.
That's it.
And from what I know and understand, and from what you can share, they're not synonymous, because skinny does not make you any more healthier, or means you're not getting any more nutrients in your body just because you're thin.
Right. And that's exactly it. And I'm glad that you touched on that as well, because I was in that weight loss cycle, before I got married. So when I did lose that weight, I said to myself, okay, look, I'm tired of this losing it, gaining it back, losing it, gaining it back. I want to lose it in a way that it's sustainable. Yes. I want to develop healthy habits that I can have for life, not just to fit into this dress, not to just to look good in this outfit because I'm going out somewhere. I want healthy, sustainable habits. And that's why I wrote the book all about it. My book is called Unbreakable, and it's all about the 7 habits that I use to lose weight. But you can think of them more as 7 principles for lifelong health and for healthy habits.
Absolutely.
And it's not all food. FYI.
Say your book one more time.
It's called Unbreakable. I thought I had a cover of it. I know it's up here on the shelf somewhere, but it's called Unbreakable.
Yep, it's okay.
Get it on Amazon. Yeah.
Yes, send me the link of it so I can include it in the episode's bio to make sure you all get a copy of that to support Trudy, because I love self-help books that can guide me across multiple domains of my life. And a lot of things you're talking about here, who knew nutrition has such an influence into stress, anxiety, and what you're inviting us to do is really own that mind-body connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is
Absolutely.
there anything left in the rice method that you want to share before we get ready to wrap up?
Yes, the E. Let's get to the E. So I had to get creative on this one. So it's emphasis on gut health. So that's where the E comes in. But I think I've saved the best for last because this really is the most important one because your gut is considered to be your second brain. So by nourishing your gut, you're also nourishing your brain. So the relationship between your gut and your brain, it's bidirectional. Okay, so this just means that your brain says messages to your gut says messages to your brain. And this is done through neurotransmitters like serotonin. Okay, so we now know the neurotransmitter serotonin that makes us feel good and happy is actually produced in the gut. Okay, so that's why it's really important to focus on those foods that help to nourish our gut health. Okay, and there's two things that can do that. We have probiotics and we have prebiotics. Okay, so probiotics are your gut's beneficial bacteria, while prebiotics are food for those bacteria. So these foods are actually really great for nourishing the gut because prebiotics in particular contain a special type of fiber that helps to nourish the gut. Okay, I'm going to get to some of those. Actually, I'll talk about what some of those foods are now, and then I'll also talk about foods that are harmful to your gut that you might want to minimize. Okay, so in terms of like prebiotics and probiotics, you can do things like kombucha. So sometimes if I feel like I want a glass of wine, but I want to be good, I might swap out the glass of wine for some kombucha, put it in a really nice glass. Okay, that tastes absolutely delicious. There's so many different flavors now. You want to eat, high fiber foods like leeks. Leeks is another good one. Other fermented foods like, miso, sauerkraut. Those are also really good too. Kimchi is really delicious as well. Asparagus, like that's another good one too. All of these foods really help to nourish your gut. Now, in terms of things that, are harmful to your gut, vegetable oils. So canola oil, which is one that a lot of us use for cooking
And you
in
said
our meals,
harmful,
right?
harmful, right?
Harmful,
Yes.
yeah, canola oil. So canola oil is high in omega-6 fatty acids, okay? So when it comes to brain health, when it comes to managing stress, we really want to add in more omega-3s because omega-3s help to dial down that inflammatory response in our body. So most of us are getting way too many omega-6s because we're using a lot of these vegetable oils that contain these omega-6 fats, but we're not getting enough omega-3s. Okay, so for omega-3s, you can do things like salmon, mackerel, or you can take a supplement if you wanted to do that as well. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that because I know a lot of people are using canola oil in their kitchens for sure. Antibiotics are also harmful to your gut health as well. And antibiotics may not necessarily be the antibiotics you're taking, but it could be in the foods that you're eating. So a lot of animals that are farm raised are, pumped with antibiotics so that they can raise them quicker, make them bigger, more profit, right? So you have to remember that you are what the animal eats. So if you're eating these animals that have been pumped with antibiotics, I'm sorry to say, but it's passing that on to you as well. Okay. And then, of course, stress, which we talked a lot about this evening, definitely poses a threat to your healthy gut bacteria as well.
Absolutely. Y'all, Trudy just reminded us that the gut is the second brain, and serotonin also gets produced there as well. That's the happy chemicals that our brain and our body makes. And I hope as you guys replay this and listen to it, you can see, feel, and hear like, oh, maybe if I tweak that one thing or one or two things where I really can start making a difference in my whole health with starting and focusing on, nutrition, because we need fuel. We need fuel. But you want to make sure it's the good fuel because people are wondering why am I snapping off and how I show up. Am I showing up as my best self? But if you're moody and irritable, not sleeping well, go back to the basics and what am I putting in my body and how is it coming out as a result? So, how does a person turn stress into their superpower so that they can be more resilient and tackle that stress?
Well, that's
Because,
exactly it. Oh, wait.
no, go ahead. I want to hear what you got.
Well, yeah, like I talked about earlier, like nobody is free of stress, right? But you can master the way that you react to it and rise above it. So you really need to see stress as an invitation. Okay. And, really quick story, like when I was in the corporate world, I had a boss that was just never happy with my work. Although everybody else on my team was more than happy with my work, she was never happy. She was always criticizing me. So, I would usually go to the bathroom, go in the cubicle, and I would just kind of have like a moment to myself, right? One day gratitude washed over me because I said to myself, Trudy, you don't have to take this. You don't have to accept this. Your skills go with you. Okay, so if these people don't appreciate your skills and don't appreciate what you bring to the table, there's going to be another company that does. So that was me, looking at stress as an invitation, and for me to go deeper to understand that I had these skills I could take with me and that I could bring with me somewhere else, right? And I knew what my worth was and I knew what my value was. So we just need to see stress as an invitation. And that's what I mean when I say turning it into your superpower. Don't see it as something that's crippling you. Look at it as something that's forcing you to become a better version of yourself.
Yeah, because stress is going to happen. If you are consciously living life, you are experiencing stress. And so I love that reframe. And that's where that psychological flexibility comes in. And it allows you to just spin the stress around and look at it through a different lens or a different angle. Mm-hmm. So I really honor and appreciate you instilling that in us. So as we get ready to wrap up, where can our audience find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Trudy E. Stone. Or you can go to my website, trudyestone.com.
Okay. And tell us the name of your book again and your podcast.
Yes, the book is called Unbreakable, and the podcast is called The Mind Your Body Show.
Mind Your Body Show. I already started listening to it, so very excited. So Trudy, I truly want to thank you for joining me this evening for the Space for Sistas Wellness Series. And so I want you to hang on just a little bit longer before we close out, but I'm going to go ahead and close out across the socials. So thank you all so much for listening to the Space for Sistas podcast. Please comment, like, and share. Visit our website if you want to become a guest or if you have any topics of suggestion. Don't forget to subscribe to our email list to get all the deets about all Space for Sistas things. Want to reach us? Connect with us on Space for Sistas across social media platforms. As I always say, protect your peace and do it unapologetically. So that is the end of the podcast, but we are still going live. Does anyone have any questions that you all want to ask Trudy, who is a certified culinary nutritionist? Any questions out there? What would you say to a mom who has 3 kids and who does not do well with meal prepping? How can you help her? How can you help me come up with a better solution?
Yeah, I would say think about creating parts of meals versus like a big long recipe. And this is what I do when I'm short on time as well. So instead of opening up a recipe book that has 21 different ingredients and 12 steps, just make those parts of meals. Okay. So for example, it could be, chicken. Maybe you get a few different chicken breasts, you season them up, you put them all on a baking sheet, and then you put them in the oven, right? Then you get some vegetables, chop some vegetables up, roast them all together. You might maybe make another batch of quinoa, right? Or rice, whatever your grain might be that you like, make that. And then you just assemble those things throughout the week. Rather than following a big long recipe, if you just kind of pair different components together, you're going to find that you're actually going to get through the week with a lot more food versus having to make something every single day. Because who wants to be in the kitchen making something every single day? Not even me.
It's getting nice outside too. No, thank you.
Yeah. And an Instant Pot. I would also say an Instant Pot as well. If you don't have an Instant Pot, get an Instant Pot because it is like having an assistant chef in your kitchen. You literally just plop everything in that baby and you walk away. Even if you had something from your freezer, you can even put frozen meat in there and then cook it in there. You don't even have to thaw it out first. You can just throw that in there as well. So I would say get an Instant Pot because it's a really great way to just, like I said, put everything in one pot and make one meal, and that can stretch you out for a few different meal occasions.
Even crock pots, waiting on a crock pot to get done is too long for me. Give me 20 minutes. I make a really good potato and leek soup too.
Ooh,
yes.
I need that recipe.
I don't have a recipe. I just throw it in there. There's no recipe, Trudy.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's another thing. I avoid salt, so I use a lot of spices, a lot of curries and different seasonings. I grow my own herbs. So really get a little uncomfortable and do some different things. So I love this question. I'm a Black woman. How can I still go to family events and how can I go to family events, but also get my family to like healthier foods?
Ooh, good question. So I always say bring a crafty contribution. Because if you know you're going to go to that event and there's going to be nothing there for you to eat, but you're trying to stay on top of your health goals, you need to bring something that you know that you at least yourself can eat, right? So I would say that number one. And like I talked about earlier, like look at some of your favorite like unhealthy meals and see if there's a way that you can maybe swap out a couple of ingredients to make them healthier. Okay. Now, one thing I like to do, like if I'm bringing something, let's say to like a family function or family event, I'll make this, I don't even know what the name of it is. It's almost like an enchilada kind of casserole. So I just put everything just goes in one pot. Okay. So I put some bell peppers in there. I'll throw some onions, some garlic. I'll add some black beans in there, a little bit of cheese. I love cheese. I'm sorry. A little bit of spinach in there, some diced tomatoes. Just stir that all around in the pot, and then you just transfer that all to like a casserole dish. And rice. Did I mention rice as well?
No.
Then you want to transfer that to So then you transfer that to a casserole dish, and then you just bake that in the oven for like maybe 20 minutes. So even something like that, I think that would really help to get your family on board as well, because it tastes so good. It's almost like a burrito kind of like casserole, and it's delicious. But, I would definitely say like bring something healthy that you know that you can eat, and try to expose your family to that as well to try to get them on board.
Yep. This is interesting. How can I help my therapist understand that everything isn't mental with me and that I really need to work on my health? Is therapy the space for that?
Ooh, that is a great question. I feel like that's a question for you, Dominique.
I got an answer. I got an answer. So what this individual is asking is, hey, I'm trying to let my therapist know that, not all my stuff is related to my mental health per se, but some of it is the other part of my health. Like I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in a lot of the information I get from my clients and how to best work with them involves listening. If a client's saying, I need this part of my wellness plan, one, we should be assessing for it. It's very negligent for a therapist to only focus on depression, anxiety, or stress, because as Trudy just reminded us, you cannot talk about stress, anxiety, or any of the others without talking about what you put in your body, that gut health. And so I would tell my client to have an honest conversation with her therapist is that she needs a more diverse way to work on her treatment plan. So honest conversation, but also don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. If you know you need something additional to your wellness plan, there's a shared responsibility that you have to go seek it out. But if it's impacting a therapeutic relationship that everything's like, oh, it's because you're depressed. It's because you're depressed. Like, no, I'm saying I have a hard time making healthy food decisions. And it's not always because I'm depressed. You got to make some decisions about, is this therapist actually listening to you? So I can go on about that all day in terms of advocacy, in terms of putting things on the table with your therapist, because we are assessing and there's so many things going on in that session. And sometimes clients do have to speak up just a little bit more. But that's a conversation for another day of how to self-advocate within the therapy environment. So I'll make note of that. So I'm gonna go through one more question that I see. I think it's coming through YouTube, I think. When I'm at work and people are making comments about my weight, how do you suggest I stand up to this and not get kicked out or be called the angry Black woman?
Ooh, that's another tough one. You guys are putting me in the hot seat today.
Y'all coming through tonight.
I would say one thing I educate my clients on is that when you're making any changes in life, whether it's just eating healthier, whether it's losing weight, you need to make a list of people that are going to support you, people who are going to try to sabotage your goals by, trying to bring you down to their level, like crabs in a bucket, and people who are going to be kind of somewhat in between. and think about how you respond to each one of those scenarios. So I think it's kind of like you have to think about this beforehand before you actually go into that situation. So that's how I would kind of say it, as to what to say specifically to people who are, not in line with their health goals. I think first of all, it comes with having a strong why. So if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to establish healthier habits, the first question you need to ask yourself is why. And don't just say, it's because you want to fit into, your jeans that you used to be able to wear before you had a baby. Really dig deep and figure out, what is that why? Like, why is it that you really want to lose weight? Why is it that you really want to eat healthier? Maybe it's because, your mother had diabetes and you don't want to have diabetes as well. Like, whatever that is, I really want you to dig deep and have that why. And I think that's going to help you to just dig deep and have the intuition as to how to respond to these people when you're sure about your goals and your why of why you're trying to make these changes in your life.
I'm going to add to that. I know this is Trudy Spotlight tonight, but I'm going to add to that because one, we got to call people's behavior out. If someone at work is making comments about whether you have more assets or whether you are on a thinner side, wherever your weight journey is, one, call people's behavior out, because that can be quite microaggressive. It could create a hostile work environment. And I talk a lot about feeling seen, safe, and supported, which is the three pillars for Space for Sistas. If you cannot feel seen, safe, and supported at work, that's an issue, because you got to go there every day and you want to show up as your best self. So one, call attention to that behavior. I feel what when you make comments about my weight. I am asking that you whatever. I ask one time. It's just like the whole name correction. I'm gonna tell you how to say my name one time. The second time we're gonna have a problem. But this is more serious than that in terms that's almost bordering harassment for people to make comments about your weight. If they're not willing to support you and acknowledge your growth, your progress, and support you, you got to take that higher up. And again, it comes back to that self-advocacy. And as Trudy said, figure out who's supporting you along this journey. And your work family really becomes a part of that journey, because they having all those doggone potlucks and everything. But if you're ever in a position where you are feeling emotionally unsafe because of those comments, speak up. Because likely it's not just happening to you, and that person has likely gotten away with it. Assess your environment, assess your resources and your opportunities. Is it safe, emotionally safe for you to be there if nothing happens to that person? Mm-hmm. And that is one of my speaking topics is how to create psychologically safe workspaces. But that does invite us to use our emotional intelligence skill set of advocacy, honoring other people's positions, but never at the cost where you feel unsafe or disrespected. So that's my response. And after that, look, don't go turning tables and chairs, but speak up for yourself. So I want to go ahead.
And can I add to that as well, Dominique, too? Mm-hmm. Because I used to get asked this question, like when I was working in the corporate world, people would always ask me, "Oh, do you have any kids? Why don't you have any kids yet? I can't believe you don't have any kids yet. You're getting older. Like, girl, you need to get on that." Mm-hmm. And that used to really anger me, because people didn't understand at that time that I had fertility issues. Mm. So I would just say to them, I would say, you know what? I'm really not comfortable having that conversation with you. Mm-hmm. And I would leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Period. That's it. Yeah. So that's one line that you can say to kind of shut it down. And they may get the point when you say that, like, ooh, okay, I know not to go there with her. And you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be going there with anybody.
Yeah. And mean it when you say it. And uniquely to a Black woman working in the corporate world, many of my clients are high functioning professionals. So they are in corporate, they're doctors, lawyers, and I have a full spectrum of clients I serve. And many individuals in certain workplaces, they experience those microaggressions, those subtleties that really causes them, that contributes or activates their desire to emotionally eat when they get home, because they're just like, that was a hard day and all I want to do is comfort. And so even looking at how your environment at home, community, and work influences what you're putting in your body you have a responsibility to be mindful and identify alternative coping skills. But why allow that to open up the door or be an opportunity for you to sabotage the work you're doing and your consciousness of what you're putting in your body? So, um, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. So we wrapped up the podcast episode and want to do a quick Q&A. So obviously these lives will be up. Please drop your comments and further questions in the comment section, and we'll do our best. I'll do my best to answer them or direct them to Trudy and see if she has an opportunity to answer them for you. So Trudy, again, thank you so much for joining me on Space for Sistas, and I will look forward to engaging with you more. I think you are super dope, and she's in Canada, so I have a reason to go to Canada for real now.
Yeah.
Look, I travel. But thank you all so much. So across the socials, y'all have a great night and be safe out there. Bye. All right, give it a few seconds.